As the CCP's fourth plenum has just ended, Beijing has grown even more eerie. Another military purge, a subdued funeral for Yang Zhening, an economy mired in a quagmire, and people's livelihoods in distress, from the core of power to the city streets, a China-wide stallout is unfolding. Don't miss the next drop, subscribe and hit the bell. Beijing is no longer quiet. No sooner had the CCP's fourth plenum ended than another absentee list exploded in the military, and at the funeral of Nobel laureate Yang Zhening, there was not a single current top CCP leader present. Meanwhile, Shanghai's office towers are said to need 100 years to lease out, and Hunan's autumn harvest has turned into a mud-bog battlefield. Power struggle, economic breakdown, natural disasters and popular resentment, all surging at once. Some say this is not just 1 week of China news, but the electrocardiogram of the entire system, shuddering. 3 major messages released by the fourth plenum. What should you watch for? Let's first talk about the CCP's fourth plenum, which ended not long ago. The communiqué sent out 3 important signals, and each carries deeper implications. The first signal is that the anti-corruption storm may be fiercer than you think. This isn't just talk. This plenum should have had 205 Central Committee members in attendance, but only 168 showed up. What we know, 1 person has died, and 10 have already been confirmed purged. So where did the other 26 go? No explanation, no accounting. Foreign media like the BBC pointed out, could these absent higher-ups already have been swept up by the anti-corruption campaign? Not only that, a large number of alternate members also didn't attend. This has sparked considerable speculation. The scale of this purge may be larger than we think. The most shocking thing is still the military's absentee list. Of the 33 generals on the Central Committee, 22 did not attend. Among them, 8 are known to have been removed, but 14 more have vanished without a trace. Why didn't these people come? In the CCP's highly opaque system, such questions may never be answered. What is certain is that the CCP had already begun cleaning house before the meeting. Including the military's number 3, He Weidong, who had been expelled from the party and the military before the session convened. So what do these major absences signify? Do they mean Xi Jinping's power remains firmly in hand? Or has his power already been weakened? For now, the internal struggle within the party shows no sign of relaxing. Just as Jiang Jinquan, director of the CCP Central Policy Research Office, said at a press conference the day after the plenum ended, "We will unswervingly oppose corruption and resolutely fight a protracted battle against corruption." Commentators point out that the CCP's anti-corruption typically reeks of power struggle and factional cleansing, something that is inevitable given the system's genes. The second signal from the fourth plenum is technological self-reliance and the development of new quality productive forces. You may have heard this term but may not be clear on what it represents. Behind it lies an extension of the U.S. China tech war. At present, trade and tech frictions between China and the US are still heating up. China wants US chips and advanced software, the US wants China's rare earths and magnetic materials. Neither side is willing to concede because these critical technologies involve not only the economy, but strategic dominance. One of the goals set forth by this fourth plenum is self-reliance and self-strengthening in science and technology, meaning, don't rely on the US, do it ourselves, mobilize state-owned enterprises, private firms, and the military to go all in on high-tech R&D. Many of these technologies may also relate to military uses. The term New Quality Productive Forces is the CCP's catch-all label for this new strategy. China's economic focus over the next 5 years will revolve around one center: more advanced technology, and preferably no longer dependent on the US. The third signal is boosting domestic demand and encouraging consumption, but unfortunately, there are no concrete solutions. The U.S. China trade war has cost China many export orders, a heavy blow to a regime whose economy has long relied on exports. In fact, even before Trump levied tariffs on China, many Chinese scholars had argued, the economy must transform, it cannot rely on exports, it must rely on domestic demand. But that's easier said than done. Now the fourth plenum is once again calling for building a strong domestic market and accelerating the construction of a new development paradigm. It sounds impressive, but how will it be done? This kind of CCP policy document is usually more of a macro vision than a specific operational manual. Especially now, with the real estate crisis unresolved and youth unemployment high. If people worry about their livelihoods, how can they be willing to spend? So outside critics say, you can keep talking about promoting domestic demand, but without a reassuring employment and income environment, how can consumption possibly rise? In summary, the three signals released by this CCP Fourth Plenum not only shape policy directions for the next 5 years, they also reflect the tense atmosphere inside Beijing. The anti-corruption drive continues to intensify, and looks set to keep intensifying. Technological self-reliance has become a national priority, especially as U.S.-China confrontation persists. Domestic consumption is seen as a lifeline, but for now, no concrete fixes are visible. Yang Zhening's funeral unusually subdued. The current top CCP leadership collectively missing. On the very next day after the Fourth Plenum concluded, the eerie quiet of a farewell ceremony again drew attention to the movements of the top leadership in Zhongnanhai. Let's talk about an event that shocked many observers, Yang Zhening's funeral. This internationally renowned Nobel Physics laureate holds a pivotal position in China's scientific community. He returned to settle in China years ago and has long been highly praised by the CCP. By past practice, a funeral at this level should be greatly solemn, possibly with the highest CCP leaders in attendance. But on October 24, at Beijing's Babayashan, an extremely unusual scene unfolded at Yang Zhening's farewell. Not one top current CCP leader appeared. Even Xinhua's official report was under 100 words. Besides listing Yang's official titles, it only mentioned that the funeral was held, plus one sentence, on October 24. People lined up to bid farewell to Yang Zhening. This isn't ordinary low-key treatment, it's a cold handling. So where was Xi Jinping? Where were the other top leaders? Keep in mind, the day before, October 23, the CCP's Fourth Plenum had just concluded. Many had predicted that she might attend the funeral the next day, at least send a wreath or issue condolences. But, nothing at all. Not only Xi Jinping, the entire set of current central leaders collectively missed Yang Zhening's funeral. Even more striking, the education minister, the science and technology minister, the president of the Chinese Academy of Sciences, and even heads of organizations like the China Association for Science and Technology didn't show. Many netizens exclaimed, this level of ceremony doesn't even compare to that for non-Nobel level scientists, let alone the memorials for Qian Shuesan or Deng Jiaxian back in the day. But what's even stranger came afterward. According to posts on the overseas platform X, some disclosed, at Yang Zhening's funeral, only retired senior figures like Wen Jiabao and Yu Zhengsheng sent wreaths. As for the current top leaders, all were absent. So here's the question, why? Why was this model returnee long touted by the CCP officially, seemingly put into deliberate, cold storage at the end? Several explanations have emerged. The first version, fierce power struggles are underway inside the CCP. As just mentioned, the Fourth Plenum had just closed, and before the session, on October 17, He Weidong, a CMC vice chairman handpicked by Xi Jinping, together with 8 full generals, was suddenly expelled from the party and the military. This is an earthquake-level event at the top. Some observers analyze, this shows that although Xi Jinping still holds the trinity of titles, General Secretary of the party, Chairman of the CMC, and State President, his actual power has been weakened, and he may even have lost personnel decision-making authority. Some commentary goes so far as to say, the reason the funeral was so subdued is that the top echelon in Zhongnanhai is locked in a power struggle and finds it difficult to appear publicly. In other words, it's not that they didn't want to attend, it simply wasn't the moment. There's an even more sensitive interpretation that the cold handling of Yang Zhening was a political signal. His return to serve the motherland is no longer held up as a value paradigm, and China's future scientific development will tilt toward a more closed, militarized path. Another possible signal, is Xi Jinping's control over personnel being weakened? According to state media reports, on the day of the funeral the National People's Congress Standing Committee happened to convene a new round of personnel appointment meetings lasting 5 days. The timing is quite delicate, prompting many to speculate, is she losing the initiative to control the entire bureaucracy? Some analyses suggest that for the sake of the overarching goal of protecting the party, the CCP may be internally compromising and redistributing power. In other words, she remains on stage, but perhaps as a symbolic leader, with real power quietly shifting. Thus, what looked like a low-key funeral for Yang Zening is seen as revealing fractures in the CCP's top political landscape. Shanghai's office towers collapse, won't be fully leased for 100 years. Let's shift the lens back to China's economy. Behind the prosperity seen from orbit are the cold, hard figures on the ground. Shanghai's office market is undergoing a century-scale collapse. A city's office inventory will take 100 years to lease out? What kind of economic crisis is brewing behind that? According to the latest reports, in the third quarter of 2025, Shanghai's Grade A office market tanked. Sky-high vacancy, falling rents, soaring supply, and almost zero demand. Even more dramatic, some experts bluntly said, it'll take 100 years to lease out the existing stock. Sound like a joke? Let's look at the data. Two major international commercial real estate firms, Cushman & Wakefield and Colliers, released Q3 2025 figures showing Shanghai Grade A office stock, 17.81 million square meters, net absorption, i.e., what actually got leased, only 29,000 square meters. What does this mean? Well-known finance blogger Wei Who Talks Property put it this way: on average, each Grade A office building leases out less than 10,000 square meters a month. Landlords are in tears. Even more startling, compared with the same period last year, net absorption has plunged by more than 80%. Supply and demand are utterly out of balance. Another finance influencer, Master May, noted, the office market supply-demand relationship has entered a state of extreme imbalance. In Q3 2025, Shanghai's office vacancy rate reached nearly 22%, and during the same quarter another 114,000 square meters of new office space came to market. Full-year new supply is expected to hit 772,000. What does that mean? New buildings keep coming online, even when nobody is renting. Meanwhile, rents keep sliding. If space can't be leased, prices will naturally fall. The current average rent for Shanghai Grade A offices is 6 renminbi per square meter per day, down 3.3% from Q2. Despite such low rent, there are still no takers. More worrying still, it's not just Shanghai, rents are falling nationwide. According to the China Index Academy, among 80 major commercial districts across the country, 64 have seen rents fall. This is a nationwide commercial real estate crisis. Wei Who Talks Property bluntly said, if first-tier cities are like a cancer diagnosis, then commercial real estate in second- and third-tier cities may already be in hospice care, waiting for the final verdict. Office towers and retail frontage have always been the weathervanes of economic vitality. If even the central business districts of Shanghai are sitting empty, who still believes China's economy can make a V-shaped rebound? What this reflects is the collapse of business confidence, the deterioration of the economic fabric, and a dress rehearsal for an as-yet unnamed Great Depression with Chinese characteristics. The strongest fall reigns in 64 years, farmers suffer massive losses. While city office vacancies soar, another collapse, barely noticed, is unfolding in the fields. The strongest autumn rain in 64 years has plunged farmers in China's heartland into a disaster-level muddy fall harvest. It's hard to imagine that in harvest season, the central plains of China would see such scenes: farmers soaking in muddy water, pulling peanuts and picking corn by hand, plant by plant, working until their backs can't straighten. Vast tracts of farmland growing mold and rotting, farm machinery unable to enter the fields, labor costs tripling while income is almost zero, some farmers even saying, might as well die, then I wouldn't have to keep doing this. All because of the strongest autumn rains in 64 years. Hunan, harvest season turns into a mud pit war. According to the Hunan Meteorological Bureau, since September the province's average precipitation reached 408.9 mm, 2.9 times the normal level. The number of overcast/rainy days hit 36.7, 17 more than usual. The Xuchang area even broke the 800 mm rainfall mark. Average daily sunshine was under 2.2 hours. The golden harvest window was completely drowned by one rain after another. Staple crops like peanuts and corn began sprouting in the ground, growing mold, with root systems rotting and entire fields flattened. Farmland ceased to be a symbol of hope and became a swamp of foul mud. This natural disaster may directly affect the sowing window for the next season's wheat and garlic, creating a domino effect of one disaster dragging multiple seasons down. Farm machinery has been paralyzed and manual labor costs have soared. Liu Yongli, alias, a Hunan farmer with 28 mu of peanuts, had to rely entirely on manpower to pull them, plant by plant. Machines simply couldn't get into the fields, too wet, they'd sink and couldn't get out. He said, "We've worked non-stop for a month, my back won't straighten, I take painkillers every day just to keep going." And a large patch still rotted. Collecting crop residues, which used to be free, now costs money. Day labor at 210 yuan isn't enough to hire anyone. Shandong, corn soaked and stinking, hand-picking ear by ear. The situation in Yantai, Shandong, is also grim. Farmer Zheng Yunpeng, alias, said, "The torrential rains left corn submerged, waist-deep, you can't even get into the fields, the stench is overwhelming." They had to use pumps to drain the water before sending people into the fields to pick corn by hand, one ear at a time. Behind it all are skyrocketing costs, abysmal efficiency, and crushing psychological pressure. Drying is another dilemma, homes and bathrooms piled high with crops. After painstakingly salvaging what they could, the rains continued, leaving nowhere to dry. Crops piled up in living rooms, even bathrooms, with fans blowing 24/7. But the problem is, if you leave it in the field it molds, and if you don't leave it in the field, it still molds. Some farmers even rented grain dryers, 200 yuan a night, running around the clock. But the quality still couldn't be saved. The cost math, the more you plant, the more you lose. Liu Yongli did the math for his family, for 40 mu, with land rent at 500 yuan per mu plus fertilizer, irrigation, labor, and transport. If peanuts sell for less than 4 yuan per gene, it's definitely a loss. This year's peanut quality is extremely poor, nowhere near fetching a good price. Soybeans are even worse, the market price has dropped to 0.4 yuan per gene, not enough to cover the cost of fertilizer. Zheng Yunpeng's corn yields are also miserable, his family's 100 mu produced 200 gene less per mu than last year. The news says it's a bumper harvest, I can only say, that's for the sake of keeping people calm. More worrying still, wheat sowing is already delayed, the soil is too wet to plant. Agricultural experts warn, this will directly impact next summer's harvest. All this pressure falls squarely on the shoulders of the farmers. This is the truest economic frontline.